Welcome to your iconic image. If you want to take control of your image and be a power player in your space, then this is the show for you. Here we will arm you with tools and information to help you grow your brand on purpose. I'm your host, Marlana Semenza, photographer and visual strategist. Now let's dive into today's episode. Jeff Lovell is an expert guide and coach for authentic living. He created the Great Life Project to help successful creative founders and executives who are great at work be great at life. Welcome, Jeff.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be with you.
So we're going to have a conversation today about authentic purpose. So first, let me start by asking you, because the word authentic is thrown around by a lot of people.
Sure.
So what does it mean to you?
That's a great question. I appreciate you clarifying that. I think something that's authentic, right? It's true all the way through. Like I have an authentic looking desk that's not made of real wood, right? So it lacks the integrity all the way through. You peel under a layer and you pretty quickly find out it's not the real thing. And so authentic purpose it comes from the core of who you are, and it's born out of your identity and a deeper sense of a deeper sense of who you are and what your life is about, rather than just some of these more surface level things.
So then how do we find ours?
Yeah, that is the question, isn't it? And I think people often wish there was a quick answer to that question. I think part of my work is helping people slow down and find a better answer to that question. And one of the places I often start with people is, rather than just diving into, well, tell me what is my authentic purpose, let's slow down and talk about all the kinds of inauthentic purpose that oftentimes is a part of our life. For a number of people, like for me, part of that journey was a coach that I was working with at that point in time asking me this question, what if the thing you're searching for, that next mountain you need to climb, isn't out there somewhere, but what if it's actually in here? What if the next work you need to do, the best work you need to do, is something that's happening inside of you? So, that kind of set me on this journey of unpacking these inauthentic versions of life and purpose and meaning that I think most of us encounter them from time to time. It's not that we're doing something bad when we experience them. It's just that we shouldn't settle for them. I think of things like, there's all these other me's that are out there. There's the me that I wish I was. I wish I was taller and better at basketball, or at least middle school Jeff wished I was taller and better at basketball. Or there's the me that I think other people want me to be, whether that's my boss or my family or friends, or even just kind of that society, or this, depending on your career of choice, there's kind of those versions of you that you think you're supposed to be to succeed. I don't know. There's all kinds of those. I think one of the big ones that people tend to fall for is that there's the me that people will pay me to be, right? Or the me that has succeeded. And so sometimes those things send us down these other roads that we keep going down them because they keep paying us and it feels successful. But I don't know if you've ever had this experience. I woke up one day in my 30s and said, "Oh, I'm successful, but I don't want to do this."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. How many of us do you think seek that purpose and that validation outwardly as opposed to looking inwardly for it?
Yeah, I think that is the most common starting place. Is we say, when we're searching for purpose, a lot of people are searching for purpose, and that isn't always the words we put on it. Sometimes it's just that laying awake at 2 a.m. saying there's got to be more to life than this, or what am I doing with my life? Or it just feels like something's missing. But I would kind of put the words searching for purpose on that. And I think a lot of people are searching for it, and we search for it in all these outward places, right? From our culture, from our community, from our family. Sometimes our success tells us what feels like purpose. Sometimes our failures tell us something, and we kind of live our life chasing after these things. And I think some of the most important work we can do, to answer your question more specifically, is I want to help people make a mindset shift from being a searcher of purpose into being a bringer of purpose. Like we don't just experience purpose from our work, we actually bring purpose to our work. We don't just get purpose from our family and our relationships, we can bring purpose to it. And I think that is a key mindset that unlocks a lot of things for people.
Yeah. So how do we get to that point?
Yeah. It's a courageous journey. I think a lot of people, at least for me, should say it took courage. It took slowing down. takes willingness to say, maybe what I have right now isn't the version I want it to be, which is scary. And I think it's okay to do the scary thing. And sometimes that's why we need coaches. That's why we need a good friend or others to come alongside us to not have to go on those journeys alone. I think having the courage to name the other ways that I've sought that purpose. Again, people really want to quickly jump to, how do I find it? Where's the thing? And there's an unlearning process before you can learn, right? So let's unlearn what you've been taught about purpose, about meaning, about, a lot of my clients, they work in branding and design and marketing and advertising, which is about winning the awards. It's about climbing the ladder, and it's about getting your name in the articles and all that, right? And that's great. And there's nothing wrong with those things, but subliminally, a lot of us, it's pretty common, that starts to feel really good, except for that it's kind of the shiny candy shell, right? It's the thing that's pretty on the outside and everybody looks at it and it's glossy and happy, but it's kind of a melty mess in the middle. So I think a lot of people find that they get down this road and start to ask themselves, well, is that really my purpose? Is it just to keep climbing the ladder, or is there something else that I'm missing?
So are there questions that we should be asking ourselves along the way to see if we're on the right path or not?
Yeah. Of course. And I don't know that there's a one size fits all. One of the true things is that there's some great research in the last 20 years. Bronnie Ware wrote about it. Daniel Pink is writing a lot about regrets these days. There was a big Harvard grant study where people are talking about regrets. And the number one regret that comes up over and over again for people is that when they get to the end of their life, they wish they had the courage to live a life that was true to themselves. And so I think there's a lot of kinds of questions that can emerge out of that, right? If you play the movie of your life forward, kind of fast forward what track you're on, I think a great question is, where does that story end? What's the next chapter of that story? And is that this chapter you want to be living? I think a lot of people right now are, scratching their heads about the next chapter. We've kind of come out of this season and this crazy couple of years where people have done a lot of, thinking about what life wants, what matters most to them in life and what they want their next season to be like. So I think a first question is this story going the direction I want it to be? Am I proud of living this story? Is this the story I want to look back on and tell?
Interesting. So let's say we decide that this isn't the story that I want to tell.
Right.
And we want to shift gears.
Yeah.
How do we start to do that?
Yeah, that's great. So that starts to shift the gear right into, so where does authentic purpose actually come from? After we've unlearned some of those things, I'm going to name that, maybe I've been a success at work, but I'm not so much a success at home, or, I'm great in the community around me, but the people that know me best don't get the best version of me. So a lot of people, where we start is, the question they want to ask is, again, what's the quickest way? What's the road that's going to get me there the fastest? And so, if I change my job, if I make the move, if I change the relationship, if I only got married, or if I only ended the marriage, or, if I got another course, took another degree, all these activities that are these external things, I think people think those are going to open the doors that they're looking for. And so a common mistake, I think, that people make in trying to force their way into purpose is to start changing activities. And the problem with changing activities is those are all asking the wrong question. They're answering the question, what do I do? What do I do? And I think a better approach to actually unlocking real, authentic purpose, because again, those just cover the surface, right? Those are that's the fake desk, the laminate desk. But a better approach is, rather than changing activity, is to clarify identity. That's where we slow down and say, okay, tell me about your story. Let's unpack those chapters, because most of my clients are, people in their late 30s to early 50s, where they've got some life experience now. And usually that life experience includes some things that they're not quick to talk about. There's some pain. There's some lessons learned the hard way. There's some probably regrets. And we kind of want to gloss over those, but I think that that's where really incredible, powerful things come from, where purpose emerges, because your pain can be redeemed. Oftentimes, the things that have been most painful to us are places where we can make the biggest difference in the world. I have a friend who his house burned down when he was 9 years old, and it sent him through some painful things and some really difficult things. But he ended up in a career that is disaster relief. I mean,
wow.
he is. There's this deeply embedded thing in him out of that painful moment, but he found there were people that were really helpful to him and his family in that moment, and it just kind of shaped who he's always been. I think that's true for most of us, is that even those painful, hard parts of our story are, if we are willing to dig into them and unpack them. And I'm not a therapist, and it's not therapy work, but I think that there's something true about our pain and the hardships that we've been through that are an ingredient in our purpose.
Do you think we do ourselves a disservice by glossing over those moments in our lives?
I'm sure the simple answer is yeah. And I think those moments are too important and too formative to gloss over. And I know they're not the things that make it to our Instagram reels or our LinkedIn profiles, except for on Mental Health Awareness Week, when everybody's got those. Like, I don't mean to say that in a cliche kind of way. I just think that when we lead with, everybody's experienced pain, and so when we lead with that, when we put that out there, I think it makes us more human. I think purpose, if it's authentic, is actually attached to our most human parts. That's the deeper inside real. I mean, it's one thing to talk about purpose. I'm going to change the world and help feed all the hungry people and find world peace and all that. That's amazing. But that's also kind of a glossy version of it, versus those painful things that happened to me are sending me on a journey. And so our purpose emerges from our story, but not just our pain. I think it also emerges from our superpowers and our genius. And, you have this unique thing about you. All of us do, that only you can do. And so helping people own that, and not, again, I work with a lot of branding and design people. So there's kind of this sense of what it takes to be brilliant in that world. But the people who are the most brilliant aren't doing it like everybody else. So that's the other part too, is like unlocking your sense of passion and your unique genius and the things that only you can do. So yeah. Like for Marlana, I bet there's a version of Marlana from middle school that was doing what you're doing now. Like it's always been you. And there's that version of us that's always been us. And that's what I want to help people uncover, unpack, and kind of set free.
Do you think that if we look back on the story of our life, we will see what the common threads are?
I hope so. And I think that that's some of the most important work we can do. And part of the Great Life Project, kind of a chapter in the Great Life Project is unpacking your story and looking for those threads, the high points, the low points. But I think it's one thing to kind of catalog the events, but it's another thing to start to give them meaning. And so we begin to say, okay, let's just, for example, take the first decade of your life and let's put a chapter title on that. And then the second decade, what's the chapter there? For example, one of my friends, or one of my clients who became a friend. I love it when clients become friends. It's another thing when friends become clients, but it's better when clients become friends. She had a really difficult childhood. And so she named the first chapter of her story Broken. But then she named the second chapter of her life Brave. And then the third chapter is Becoming. And this fourth chapter is Beauty. And so I think that and for her, what that means is that when we see where those first few chapters have brought us, we get to name the next chapter. And I think that's the really powerful thing in our story, is that, there's the events, sure. And then we give them meaning. And then we say, any good story, we can start to see where it's going. Like, not to make your life a predictable movie, but it's also not just something that's happening to you. You get to help create it. So that next chapter of your story that's going to emerge out of these other ones, I think is the powerful thing. Is you're not a victim of your story. It's not just something that's about to happen to you. You get to help write what happens next.
Right. And so as we're going through and we're looking at our life story, are we looking at events, or are we looking at our reactions to the events and the way they make us feel? or how are we going about that?
Sure. A common approach is to, I think, the where people can most easily enter into the process anyway is we start with the events. There's the obvious ones, right? We moved when I was in third grade, or all the things, right? And that's fine. And fill a page with the ones that matter, and then start circling the ones, and then put some names. who are the key players in the story? And a lot of times, a surprising thing. It's surprising to the people doing it. It's not surprising to me anymore because I've seen it happen enough times. You start to put some names down. Who are the key players? And usually that starts with some heroes. But if we push a little further, we're like, oh, there's some villains in this story too, and there are some turning points. And so whether it's a 55-year-old man or a 25-year-old woman or anything in between, it's not uncommon for some tears to show up as we unpack our story. Not because I think the emotion matters. The emotion is where we get authentic again, right? It's one thing to share the facts of a story. It's another thing to share an opinion of the story. And it's a deeper thing still to feel the feelings of the story. And I think understanding what is it about those feelings?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that significant? There's a part of my story where it's incredibly joyful and happy and celebratory. What was it about that made it so significant? There's a part of my story that, at a most honest level, probably still makes me mad, right? And so what is it about that that's, when people start to understand the feelings behind it, again, you can't usually get there without naming the events and cataloging the people. And but then that's when I think the real beautiful work begins. And again, I think that's where I say it takes courage to do this journey. But man, it's costly not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
The cost of not doing it is I never live a life true to me.
Yeah.
I never redeem the story.
So let's go back to your client, because you had mentioned her different chapters.
Yeah.
So how, if you can share, how did she use that to find her authentic purpose?
Yeah. I think for her, a lot of folks in that 40, 30, late 30s, early 50s range. And I think even now in the world situation, like we're asking that what's next question. What do I want to do next? That often is an undercover purpose question. And people don't usually come to me saying, hey, what's my purpose? They usually say, what's next? Or should I change my job? And again, that's a change. I want to change the activity, hoping that that's going to unlock purpose. And so we slow down and we help them take the courageous journey. And again, for her, to help people define the next chapter, to say, well, you've got to slow down. We can't just talk about the next chapter. We have to see where the stories come from. And so for her, like she had reached that point of, broken, brave, rebuilding. I think then she had becoming, like she wanted to become the whole version. But for her, the next question was, what is that next chapter going to be? Like who do I want? What purpose do I want to bring to my story that gives purpose? Again, we become a bringer of purpose to our story. Our story isn't just all that junk that happened to me or all the good stuff that happened to me, but also I'm now reinfusing it with purpose because it set me up for her to be a creator of beauty. And for her, that meant like literally in her work as a creative, but she also used it to build this mentoring program for young women in her industry. And she wanted to help them not experience some of the crap she had been through, right? And so I think that's how our story infuses purpose for what's next. But I think the beautiful thing too is that it reinfuses the story of the past. It brings new purpose back into it.
So what I'm hearing is that people use this process when they don't know what's next, or they feel like,
yeah.
What if they do have an idea of what's next? Do you then reverse engineer it and start with, okay, well, this is where I want to go. So how does this story then play into that? Or is it still the same process?
Yeah, well, the pathway of the Great Life Project includes a number of different pieces. Authentic purpose is a big one that people feel, or they ask a lot of questions around it. So what's next is a big one for a lot of people. One of the last pieces is actually lasting contribution. For a life to be great, it has to live beyond itself, right? And so for people who feel like, okay, I know what I'm doing, I know what my life is about, but I don't have a plan necessarily for how to make this lasting contribution, or I don't know who to pass it off to. I don't know how to take the superpowers or this company that I've designed, I've founded and built. I don't know how to hand that off to the next people. So that lasting contribution piece is another key component of Great Life. And then a third piece of it is actually what I call life-giving practices, helping people master, okay, you know what you want your life to be about. So let's design your life to make it about that, like so that your life is built around these things in an intentional day-to-day basis, so that the rhythms, the practices are all in place, and so that it's kind of feeding it, and you're living from this place of overflow, not just, oh, I hope I have enough energy today to do the things that I think I care about. So.
Who is usually a good candidate for your project, the Great Life Project?
People come to me from two places. One is a place of pain and one is a place of desire, right? The pain is I'm awake at 2 a.m. wondering what's next in my life and what's missing, or I'm really good at work and I'm not so great at home. I don't want my coworkers to know about that, or but my wife knows, or my kids know. And so the people that I'm closest to don't rarely get the best version of me. So there's that kind of pain where I'm trying to figure out, why I always am just stressed to the max. I need to manage my stress. It's amazing how many of us can get to midlife and still not know how to lead ourselves well, or we don't know ourselves well enough. We're kind of just in constant reactive mode. Mm-hmm. So I really help people get intentional with and get out of react and into proactive mode. So that's that, people that come from places of pain. And that's great. I can often help people, at least there's aspirin you can take to short-term minimize the pain, right? And then there's let's get you into an ongoing therapy program, not like real therapy, but like a life building program. But then the people that come from a place of desire are, I just want my life to be great. Like I want to give the best version of me. And I want to design a life that I love, with people I love, where I'm giving my best work and I'm making a contribution. Like there's just this longing. Like that's one thing I love about designers. Like they do everybody else's projects and they make them amazing. And they know that their client never could have had this amazing thing without them. Mm-hmm. And that's a conversation I love to have. It's like, that what you can do for other people, find a coach like Jeff or the Great Life Project or some other coach that's out there that can help you do that for your life. Your life is your most important project, and you have spent your life giving your best to everyone else. Let's get intentional and make sure you're giving some of the best to you, so that at the end of this thing, you have a story to look back on that you're proud of, and you feel like you have designed and lived a life that you love. So.
Love that. And so if somebody I know you have projects coming up. I know that there's something that you're launching in the fall. Tell us about all that.
Right. So I've been doing this kind of work for over 15 years. And then in the past year, I've really kind of narrowed that focus to creatives. I've worked with tons of creatives along the way, and finally was able to say, these are my people. I want to just focus and narrow this work into that. So creating it as the Great Life Project. And this fall, we're launching a year-long coaching process where it's not just a course, it's not just a program or a group of people together on a call, but an intentional year-long guided expert journey. It's high tech, it's high touch, and it's high end. I love to help people, get really intentional with that. And I think the differentiator between what I do and some other programs is that I try to bring a real sense of presence and connection. I love to look people in the eye and just hear their story. And I think my unique genius is that I see what they can't see, and I can help connect the dots and help them slow down to build the thing that's in their head or in their heart, but they're not always sure how to put all the pieces together.
So if anybody's
we're kicking off a year-long version of that this fall.
So if anybody's interested in that, how do they go about finding that?
Yeah, there's two great ways to connect with me. I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the primary place on a daily basis where I'm sharing content and teaching, and a lot of the pieces of the puzzle come up there. But also my website is jefflovell.coach, and there's information about the Great Life Project there. There's some video overviews and a way to book a call there as well.
Perfect. And with that, I just have 4 final questions for you.
All right, let's do them.
First one, what is the best piece of advice you were ever given?
Yeah, I am grateful that I've been given a lot of good advice and I've listened to some of it. But probably the thing that rings most true to me in terms of the best advice, because it's still a question that I hear in my head on a regular basis. It's something my dad used to say growing up, is just remember who you are. Remember who you are. And what's funny is I think that's the work I'm still doing to this day. When I'd ask him a question, or when I'd wonder what I should do about a situation, or when I was getting ready to make a bad decision, his first words were, remember who you are, because who you are takes care of what you should do a lot of times, even in terms of purpose, right? We're all trying to answer the what should I do question. But if we slow down and answer the who am I question, the what you should do becomes clear.
Love that.
Yeah.
Share with us one thing on your bucket list.
My bucket list is full. I'm a kind of guy who is full of ideas of all the things that I would love to do. I think the thing I most want to do, though, like if nothing else gets accomplished in the rest of Jeff's life, I want my kids to have great lives. I want them to feel confident in knowing who they are. And so I don't think that they really want to go through my coaching program, but I hope that I'm confident that they are becoming young women who are going to change the world because of who they are. I actually just shared on LinkedIn, or actually it's a post I'm going to share later this week about the picture of my daughter from 4th grade, where they had superhero day. And she didn't come home and say, how do I dress up like XYZ superhero? She wanted to create her own superhero. She knew she wanted to be her own version of things. So I think the number one thing on my bucket list is I want my kids to become their own thing, like their best version of themselves, and feel confident in that. So.
When the toy companies finally get around to making an action figure of you, what 2 accessories will it come with?
Well, I asked my kids to consider this for me because I was like, okay, what are you going to say? And I'm going to give you 3 answers, even though you said 2. But number 1 is a cup of coffee. I always have a cup of coffee. And usually I'm sitting across from somebody having a great conversation with it. So that goes hand in hand. One daughter said it's probably a lawnmower because that's my hobby. It's my way to get outside and, just get some exercise. But my other one said a mirror. I would come with a mirror. I'm like, what is a mirror about? And she said, you are really good at helping other people see themselves in a way that they can't see themselves. So I'll take that. I thought she was going to say like, I'm really vain or something, but that wasn't her point.
Yeah,
I'll come with a mirror to help people see themselves in a new way. So,
that's great. How old was that daughter?
She is 18. So yes.
Very insightful. Yeah, and the last one, tell us again, how do people find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Jeff Lovell, or on my website is jefflovell.coach.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jeff. Thanks for being here.
It's been enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Once again, I'm Marlana Semenza, photographer and visual strategist. Please comment, like, or share this episode, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. For more information on how I can help you create your iconic image, visit marlanasemenza.com.